Good evening, everyone. It's Gordon Causey coming to you live and unscripted, as is my habit. Today is Friday, the 25th of October, 2024. It's late in the evening, 11:03 p.m., so we're darn near into the 26th, Saturday. And as a matter of fact, it is Saturday in much of the world right now, in Europe and the Middle East, certainly, which is where breaking news, if you're paying attention to the news and have been for the last few hours, you know that Israel has launched some form of a strike against the nation state of Iran. Right now, what's being reported by just about everyone is that that Israel is targeting military sites. But before I get going, my dog, Candy, expects a treat at the start of every video. She has conditioned me. I'm the one who is trained here. So let me get her treat out of my pocket. Shake paw. Shake paw. Lay down. Speak. Good. Come on up. She was out in the backyard chasing rabbits, which is what I do a lot of the time. Chasing rabbits down rabbit holes. At any rate, before I get going, you're welcome to hit, you know the drill. You're welcome to hit the like button, as someone has already done. I imagine that's Common Sense Jay, who already gave a wave. You're welcome to subscribe to the channel if you like what I have to say. An old 58-year-old Christian male, straight, Mr. Cancel Culture, ticks all the boxes for being canceled in today's world. Got my coffee. So what's happening in the world? What I had been planning to do a video on this evening I was planning to talk about the Canadian political landscape, about Justin Trudeau and how he has said that he is hanging in. He's not going to resign. He's going to stay on to fight the next election. That it is essential to stop Pierre Poilievre and stop a massive conservative majority, which is where things are pointing at this hour. So I was going to be talking about that. I was going to be talking about how the government has announced something of a reduction in Canada's level of immigration, a 20% reduction in the number of permanent immigrant residents who are allowed entry into Canada, and how it strikes me that what's happened is the Liberals, all political parties, poll the electorate. They try to determine what issues are top of mind. And it strikes me that the Liberals have identified immigration as their biggest vulnerability. And so they're seeking to reverse course, to go away from wide open immigration. Last year, there were 1.5, according to Statistics Canada, when you look at all the categories of newcomers into Canada, be it permanent residents, be it temporary foreign workers, be it asylum seekers, be it student immigrants, across all levels, all strata, they're about in the neighborhood of 1.5 million. Basically talking about adding a population the size of a province like, say, Saskatchewan, and probably bigger than the province of Saskatchewan. I'm not sure how many people live in Saskatchewan. I think it's around 1 million. And now they've signaled that among permanent residents that they're going to reduce the number by 20%. And it strikes me, the Liberals create a problem. The problem creates a mess. And then they want to be the ones to clean up the mess. And I also don't believe, personally, I don't believe Justin Trudeau when he says a 20% reduction. Okay, 20% reduction in those allowed permanent residency in Canada. But then what about all the other categories? And what is a sustainable level when you're adding that many people? We'd still be talking, if it was 1.5 million and they reduced it by 20%, we'd still be looking at over 1 million, again, across all categories. And where's the housing to come from? Where's the infrastructure to come from? Where's language training to come from? There's so much involved. Canada does need immigration, absolutely. We do not have a positive birth rate or a positive fertility rate. If without immigration, Canada's population would start to go down. I was also planning to talk, so I talked a bit about that. I was also planning to talk a bit about the fact that a CTV News report that I saw had an individual who was was given access to MAID, medical assistance in dying, over the fact that this individual was said to have suffered a vaccine injury of some kind and post-vaccination syndrome or something. And the article cast some doubt as to whether that was a valid diagnosis or not. But it struck me, you know, look at what's happened under Trudeau, under the Liberals, and I'll call it a culture of death that exists in this country. Medical assistance in dying, are abortion laws that are, well, there are no abortion laws in Canada whatsoever. Canada, like North Korea, like China, we are the three countries in the world with no restrictions on abortion ever, meaning an abortion can take place at any time and for any reason whatsoever, right up until birth. Human being is not recognized legally in Canada until it is fully emerged alive from the birth canal. Anyway, HM has shown up, and she is saying, "Good evening. Are you aware of the Pandemic Preparedness Bill 293 that has reached the second reading? There's a lot of commotion out here about that one. Second reading in the Senate. No, I haven't. The one I heard about was the one I paid more attention to recently is something out of the UN about a plan for the future or something like that, to which Canada is a signatory. I'm going to have to get caught up on the Pandemic Preparedness Bill 293. Appreciate. That's why I love doing these lives. Keeps me, you know, you can't keep up with everything in today's world. 293. I can remember pandemic preparedness. In all honesty, I'm still waiting for the first pandemic. And HM is saying that this one is about the World Health Organization. Lovely. Anyway, yeah, with what just happened tonight, though, I'm wondering to what degree all this is going to be secondary, because the main event and what my main focus has been on for the better part of the past year is on the goings on in the Middle East. I think that has significance globally and obviously for Canada. And it just got reported tonight that Israel has struck at Iran. The reporting is that it was a limited strike, a precision strike on military facilities, probably airfields. There are reports that there have been explosions in and around Tehran, the capital city of Iran, and in other locations. What will be the aftermath of it? We will have to wait and see. This has only happened within the last few hours, and it's nighttime when this happened. It was like 3 o'clock or so in the morning in the Middle East, in Tehran, and so satellite imagery and such, you know, is not the best. At night, we'll get a better indication of what was hit and what, if any, damage was done. My suspicion is that Israel is going to puff out its chest, and Israel is going to be bellicose and say that, you know, we have hit the Iranians and we've hit them hard. And I expect the Iranians to say, no big deal. We dealt with it. We repelled it. We fought off the Zionist regime and have achieved a great victory. That's the rhetoric that I expect. But we'll have to wait and see. And then I do expect that Iran will, at some point and in some fashion, retaliate, whether they retaliate directly, whether lots of questions about the capacity of Hezbollah in Lebanon to respond now that their leadership has been largely decimated through the pager attack, through the targeting of Nasrallah and other senior officials within that Iranian proxy group. And Israel has been targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, their assets, their rocket launchers. Do they have the capacity for a major retaliatory response or don't they? And this is unfolding, and everyone's talking about it having the capacity to escalate into World War III. And I started talking about that all the way back on October 7, 8, 9, right in the wake of the October 7th attack from the Gaza Strip by Hamas on Israel. We all know the story. 1,200 people reported as having been killed, 250 or thereabouts taken hostage, dragged back into the Gaza Strip, including children, including babies. And there are still children being held hostage. Whether they're alive or not, we don't know. And how Israel is supposed to respond to a group like Hamas, which when that attack took place, Hamas puffed out its chest and said, "This is just the beginning. We're going to wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea. We're going to kill or drive out all the Jewish Israelis and reclaim what they hold to be their land." And so right in the wake of that attack, I said, you've got Hamas, Hezbollah, you have these groups, they're allied with Iran. Iran is allied with Russia. Russia has a no limits partnership that it's initiated with China. Russia is also tight with North Korea. North Korea is now sending troops to Russia in order to fight in that war that they're having with Ukraine. So is this, it seems to be moving in slow motion, but it is moving. It started with Hamas, then the day later, after October 7th, on October 8th, Hezbollah started firing rockets. Even before Israel had launched its offensive against Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon started lobbing rockets, missiles, drones into northern Israel, forcing tens of thousands, 60 to 100,000 Israelis from the northern part of their country had to evacuate. And so I'm in a bit of a subdued mood because it's the game of whack-a-mole. What are you supposed to pay close attention to? What's the distraction? What's the real news? I mean, we have the upcoming election in the United States. This has the potential to impact that election. There's wide speculation that the Americans had urged, or maybe even used all their powers of diplomacy, coercion, and everything else to dissuade the Israelis from attacking Iranian oil facilities, because that would almost certainly cause a very marked increase in the cost of oil and ergo gasoline, and that would not be good for the Kamala Harris bid to be installed as U.S. president. If I do think Kamala Harris is going to win that election. At least that's what's going to be presented. That's the way I put it. She's going to be presented as having won the election, and it's simply a question of whether or not you can convince the greater majority of Americans that it was a fair and democratic election and that she won it legitimately. But I do think the outcome, I think it's a fait accompli. She is going to be named president. She's going to be elected. Whale Oil Beef has shown up and said, before the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Iran was an active borrower from the World Bank. After the revolution, lending stopped and did not resume. And Whale Oil is saying that's according to a Google search. Iran is part of the BRICS group. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're in that camp. They want to set up something of a counterbalance to U.S. hegemony throughout the world through to this Pax Americana. Um, um, we shall see. We shall see. The degree to which Iran would need, given their oil reserves, I think they have something in the neighborhood of 3% of the world's proven oil reserves. And that sounds like a small amount, but even 1% in terms of actual total barrels that can be produced today is massive. And so to what degree do they need to access the IMF or the World Bank or these other globalist institutions? Do they need to access it, or do they have alternative means? So long as they can sell their oil onto the market, they can get cash. We'll see. Just a lot going on in the world. The Canadian political scene that I had wanted to talk about, that I was planning to make that my next video. I was actually had it all planned out in my head. I was going to call it Communistic Canada's Cult of Death, little alliteration, and how MAID, medical assistance in dying, are non-existent. Abortion laws, I decided, hey, touch the third rail. Abortion is considered something of the third rail of Canadian politics. No one wants to touch it. Not even conservatives. They don't want to touch that because you're going to lose votes no matter which way you go. So you just leave it alone. Don't talk about it. Treat it. And there's a lot of ignorance about it. Most people are under the misguided assumption that Canada does have restrictions of some kind on abortion, that there are some, but there are none. There's no legal restrictions on abortion in Canada. You can an abortion can be had at any time for any reason. The Parliament of Canada, back when it was Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister of this country, there was a motion put forward just simply looking to condemn sex selective abortion, where typically what will happen is a couple will find out that the fetus, that the unborn child is a girl, and they want a boy. So abort it, because some cultures favor male children over female children. And the Canadian Medical Association has done research into this by looking at second, third, fourth children born to couples who already have girls. And they, it's that old adage of if you flip a coin 10 times in a row and it comes up heads every time, on the 11th flip, what are the chances that it'll come up tails? 50-50. Doesn't matter. The laws of probability don't change based on what had happened. And what the Canadian Medical Association research found was that in certain communities, which typically have a bias toward male children, that second, third, fourth children were disproportionately male, and they concluded that it was a very strong indication that sex selective abortion was taking place, where you find out the sex of the child ahead of time, and if it's not the sex you want, get rid of the baby and try again. And our Parliament would refuse. It never came to a vote. It was taken off the parliamentary calendar. It was not put up on the agenda for a vote, because even Stephen Harper made the political decision that abortion is just too hot a topic. The third rail, if you're not familiar with that euphemism, it's referring to a subway rail, that third rail that supplies the electricity, that powers the trains, the underground trains. And I don't know how many, it's 1.21 gigawatts. Who knows how much power is going through there, but you don't touch it, because you'll get electrocuted. Don't touch. And that's why abortion is referred to as the third rail. I have HM Wright. Does anyone young or old enough here remember Ken Taylor? Ken Taylor was the Canadian ambassador to Iran, as memory serves. Yeah, hero that helped get the American hostages out of Iran. We were all so proud of him. And Laura Floyd has shown up. Everyone's showing up tonight. And I'm not in the, it's so funny when things like this happen in the world. I mean, I wanted to talk about, what I'm talking about right now, about the abortion issue, about immigration, and about Justin Trudeau's leadership, and about the potential that he could resurrect his fortunes. There's a company called Cambridge Analytics, and I would invite anyone to look it up. Cambridge Analytics is a company that basically sweeps the internet and they collect data points on individuals. Basically, anyone like me, anyone who has been on the internet, anyone who has touched a computer or a handheld device, anyone who has anything of a digital footprint. Cambridge Analytics claims to have thousands, literally thousands and thousands of data points on you, to the extent that they know what TV shows you like, what your political opinions are, what your favorite color is, where you like to go on vacation. And with the convergence of all these data points with artificial intelligence, the ability to steer public opinion is massive. And I think we're all well aware of the fact that Justin Trudeau is very much connected with this WEF globalist cadre of individuals who want to direct human affairs globally. And he's their little puppet. And by any reasonable measure in any other time, I think any politician in Trudeau's situation would have gotten out of Dodge. So I have a number of questions. Does he think that his globalist masters are going to be able to sway the Canadian public opinion, or at least enough of it to keep him in power with at least a minority? Or conversely, is there something coming in the weeks and months ahead before a Canadian election that are we heading to World War III or something? Are there going to be supply chain disruptions? Is there going to be a cyber attack on the internet? There are all manner of things that could happen. And Trudeau is just hanging on because he wants to, be there when the proverbial shit hits the fan, because in times of crisis, incumbent governments tend to be popular. People look to them to keep them safe. That's why during the COVID era, what I call the COVID era, why we saw so many. We had a federal election in 2021. When everyone was still, well, a lot of people were still scared of their hands and breathing air, and so Trudeau went to the electorate. Then he called an early election. He was 2 years into a mandate, and he called an election that was unneeded. And basically, it was a rinse and repeat. He was elected to a majority in 2015 and 2019. He lost the popular vote to Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives, yet because of the way the vote breaks down, with the Conservatives winning handily, massively in the West, and the Liberals winning marginally in ridings in and around the GTA, lost the popular vote, but won the seat count. And so he could have kept going. He could have gone, he could have waited to see, would there have been a vote of no confidence? Probably not. But here we are. An election in 2019, an election in 2021, and now he's been running out the string. And is something coming down the pipe that he thinks he can hang on and remain as Canada's prime minister after the next election, if there is a next election? Who knows with everything that's happening in the world. But yeah, as to HM's point, in 1979, the nation state of Iran had up until that point had been ruled by the Shah of Iran and by his father, and basically a king. And they were very much in the American sphere of influence. And then there was an Islamic revolution led by the spiritual leader of that revolution was the Ayatollah Khomeini. And now the spiritual leader of Iran is the Ayatollah Khamenei. It's just an O or an A, Khomeini versus Khamenei. And one of the things that the revolutionaries did was to overrun the American embassy and to hold the embassy personnel as hostage. And that was in the run up to the 1980 election between Jimmy Carter, who was running for re-election against Ronald Reagan. And what happened while that was going on, a number of the American consular staff, embassy staff, they were able to escape to the Canadian embassy. And then over a period of weeks, the Canadians were able to establish or create fake Canadian identities for these American embassy personnel. And then eventually they were able to get them out of Iran under the guise that, this guy's a software engineer from Winnipeg, or, this is someone from StatsCan who lives in Yukon, and they had fake IDs and they got them out. And if you were after that news broke, Ken Taylor became something of a world celebrity. They made a movie about him. And if you were a Canadian down in the United States, if you went to a bar, Americans couldn't wait to buy you a beer because they were thrilled that, we had helped them out. So that's as much as I remember of it. I also remember the fact that there were claims that came out after the fact that said that George H.W. Bush, who was the vice presidential running mate of Ronald Reagan. Remember, Reagan wasn't the president at this time, it was Jimmy Carter. And that the Carter administration had actually negotiated with the Iranians and were preparing before the election to end the hostage crisis and for the Americans to be brought home. But George H.W. Bush, former director of the CIA, through diplomatic back channels and his, spook network, for lack of a better expression, this is a claim, is that he was able to orchestrate the Iranians holding on and holding off on releasing the American hostages until after the election, because it's conceivable that would have been a big, huge win for the Carter administration if they'd managed to bring the hostages home before the early November election. So instead, it happened after the election was over, after Ronald Reagan had defeated Jimmy Carter. So, and at that point, 1980, I was only 2 years from removed from having lived in the U.S. We had just moved back to Canada from Portland, Oregon in 1978. If memory serves, 1978, summer of 1978, our family moved back from Portland, Oregon, and settled in the GTA. And HM is writing that Americans put thank you signs all along the Niagara River border. I remember the stories being reported well. A lot of Canadians started tuning into American news because we liked hearing what a great, how great Canada is. We liked hearing it from our American neighbors. But have you guys got any thoughts on what's happening in terms of right now, in the here and now? Because Iran, pre-Islamic Revolution, was a different country from what it is, what it has become post-Islamic Revolution. And my own personal opinion is that, they were very much under the thumb of the United States of America. There's an interesting little bit of history that doesn't get widely reported, but you can verify this quite easily. Back in the 1950s, the Iranians had an election, and they the individual they elected as president of their country was a man by the name of Mosaddegh. And Mosaddegh, one of the first moves he did was to nationalize all the oil wells, or all the oil assets that Iran holds. He nationalized it. And of course, that the Exxon Mobils and the British Petroleums and the Western Oil Company interests were none too happy with that. And the CIA then orchestrated a coup d'etat. They overthrew the Mossadegh regime. Some of the stories I've read is that they went in and would blow up a mosque, and then the leaflets would be dropped in Farsi or Persian, claiming that the mosque was blown up by Mossadegh, to foment the conditions for the people to get rid of him. And Mossadegh was overthrown, and then the Shah of Iran was installed. and there was one. Then there was they were always called the Shah. And the Shah who left in 1979, I think he was the second generation Shah. And as a matter of fact, now, if you watch the news programs, CNN, BBC, and more, there's a now current, the son of the former Shah, the son of who's in his probably in his 50s or 60s, maybe even a little older. And he's making the rounds, claiming to be something of the deposed ruler of the nation state of Iran. So that if by some fashion the Islamic revolution could be reversed and Iran brought back into the Western sphere of influence, the American sphere, then they could maybe reinstall this guy, or install, because this, was his dad. But has anyone got any thoughts on what's happening with Iran and Israel? Do you think it has the potential to blow up into World War III? I do. I noticed that on some live streams you get the potential to you can put up a poll in the chat, and I'm just seeing if I can do that. So, just checking. Community moderation, participants, moderation activity, timestamps, reactions, pop out, send feedback. I think there is a way. I'm just not adept enough to know how. And top chat, live chat. Now, like I say, there's probably a way to do it. I'm just not technologically adept enough to figure it out. So what's going to happen in terms of our own political Canadian situation? I think there is potential that Trudeau, and my suspicion is this. My suspicion is that the Liberal Party Canada will look to establish some momentum. They've just announced they're going to be reducing the level of immigration. The number they're punting around is 20%. We're going to see a 20% reduction in immigration levels, at least among the permanent residents, among those who are given permanent resident status. And then what they can do is they can poll, and if they can create the impression that Canadians are moving toward the Liberals, even in small number, and get this all important, there's momentum and then there's perception of momentum. And if they can create the perception that Canadians are moving toward the Liberals, then I think we could see Justin Trudeau actually go to the Governor General, ask for the legislature to be, the House Commons, ask for Parliament to be dissolved for the purpose of calling a general election, call it on his own terms, and then the Liberal media machine can go full bore at trying to restore Liberal Party fortunes. Gordon, do you think Trudeau will meet Bloc's demands on the 28th? See, I haven't been keeping up enough, and that's bad. What are the Bloc's demands on the 28th? The one thing I had heard is that the Liberal caucus members, apparently it's 24 individuals, had signed a letter asking Trudeau to seriously reconsider his position as leader of the party and to get back to them by the 28th. He came back 24 hours later and said, I'm staying. But I hadn't heard, because the one thing is, for an election to happen on a vote of no confidence, the Liberals only need to have either the NDP or the Bloc backing them up. So long as they have one of those two parties, then they have the votes to survive a no confidence motion. They don't need the Bloc. They don't need the NDP, but they need one of them. And the Conservatives, by contrast, if they put forward a motion of no confidence, in order for it to pass and for the Trudeau Liberals to fall, then the Conservatives need both the Bloc and the NDP together. It has to be all three parties together. The Liberals have something in the neighborhood of 153 seats. The Bloc Québécois has something in the measure of 35, and the NDP is somewhere around 24, 25. And the Conservatives, I think, are around 118, 119. So if even getting just the bloc isn't enough for the Conservatives to topple the Liberals, they need both. And so I don't know what the demands are. Blanchet said that the Bloc wants the government to push through a bill C-139, hike. Oh, yes, I have heard about that. But they can push that if they want, but Trudeau doesn't have to give into it. I think Trudeau is thinking along the lines that, similar to what he said to a Canadian veteran, and many will remember that town hall meeting where a Canadian veteran was complaining about the lack of support from Veterans Affairs and from the government of Canada, that there wasn't enough money available to support Canadian veterans. And Trudeau said, "You are asking for more than we are willing to give." And I think it's a similar situation here, where a 10% hike, what happens, and I have heard some complaints about this, is that it somewhat creates a two-tier set of senior. Well, what level senior are you based on your age? And it strikes me ultimately that with the way things are going, for the last 3 years in a row, check this out, Canada's life expectancy is going down. Don't know why this has suddenly happened in the last 3 years, but for 3 consecutive years, whereas we've had nearly uninterrupted increases in Canadian life expectancy over the last 3 years, it's gone down. Why has that happened? Some 2021, 2022, what was different about 2021, 2022, 2023 than in previous years? I don't know. I really don't. Trying to sound as I'm being a little disingenuous. I'm not being genuine. Sharunian has shown up. Good to see you, Sharunian. And what's up is that we've got the political landscape in Canada is shifting incredibly, but at the same time, we have what is shaping up to be a major war. If we'll have to wait until the morning, until light, and we'll see what is the rhetoric coming out of Israel, what is the rhetoric coming out of Iran. I've already said what I expect. I expect Israel to puff out its chest and talk about a huge victory that it's won, and that it was able to inflict serious damage to Iranian military infrastructure. And then I expect Iran to kind of, talk about their ability to defend themselves and how the attack was inconsequential. But at the same time, I do expect Iran to respond. I don't expect them to just take one for the team and try in an effort to de-escalate, because the more I'm reading, the more I'm listening, the more I'm understanding the dynamics of the Middle East are that if you don't respond, you look weak. And in the Middle East, you do not want to appear weak. And so I expect they will answer. Randy Kinder says, someone is correct. I don't know if it's me or someone else. Just wrote correct. We shall see. It helps when I know typing is a pain in the butt, but anyway, that is where we are. That's the world today on the 25th, still the 25th, still Friday the 25th of October, 2024. The next 24 hours could be significant. By the end of this weekend, we should have a result from the election that was held in BC last Saturday. It's on a razor thin difference, one seat separating the NDP and the Conservatives in British Columbia. and who's going to end up ruling that province, we'll know by Monday. I know what's going to happen is that if the Conservatives don't win, then many on the right side of the political spectrum are immediately going to say it was Dominion voting machines and mail-in ballots and absentee ballots and everything, and that it's rigged. Ultimately, I'm hoping that Rushdad, the Conservative leader, that he becomes the premier of the province and that he has a working majority. I think you need 50. I think the number was 57. Was it 57 or 47? I forget. All I know is that there's, I think it was, no. It was 47 is needed for a majority, and things as they stand right now, going off memory, NDP 46, Conservatives 45, Green Party 2, and we'll see what happens there. And oh my gosh. Whale Oil Beef thinks I'm beginning to sound like Lloyd that I'm starting to talk like Lloyd Robertson. Wasn't it Robertson? I think you're talking about the old CTV guy, CTV national anchor. He had a far better hairline than I did. Lloyd Robertson is the way I remember his name. Anyway, and he wasn't CBC. Lloyd Robertson was CTV. The anchors on the CBC Nightly News for the longest time were Knowlton Nash, and then followed by Peter Mansbridge. Anyway, I'm getting old. Getting old stinks. But anyway, God bless. The situation in Israel is, I think it's the most important thing to focus on right now, simply because, man, oh man, if that blows up, could Canada be sending troops to war? Could we see conflict breaking out between Russia and her allies and NATO? Where's Turkey going to fall? Turkey is showing itself to be very friendly to Russian interests, but they're a NATO country. What's going to happen in this world? I think we're living in tumultuous times. And Whale Oil Beef is bringing out names from the past. Walter Cronkite, CBS, who told us the moon mission was real. I remember we were living in New Jersey in 1975, and Walter Cronkite on the CBS Evening News would say, 200 years ago today, a battle took place in Saratoga between British forces under the command of and American forces in the Continental Army commanded by George Washington. After a 3-day battle, and you would hear the whole story from 200 years ago today, leading up to July 4, 1976, which was the bicentennial year in the U.S. And kind of stunk. We were down in the United States from 1970, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75. And then in October 1975, we moved back to Canada. And so I missed the bicentennial year. And when Canada had its centennial year, I was only 1 year old, so I wouldn't remember it in any case. But Canada's centennial year, 1967, we lived in Staten Island, New York. So we were when Canada had its centennial, I lived in the States. And when the Americans had their bicentennial, I was back in Canada. And now Whale Oil wants me to have done my Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it was. October 25th, 2024. That's how he always ended, and that's the way it was. Now Whale Oil wants Trump. So if I'm going to do Trump, I have to wear my something of a Trump hat. Okay, absolutely. You're watching the best podcast. Okay, don't pay any attention to anyone else. This is the best podcast, the only podcast worth paying attention to. Gordon loves Trump. I like everyone who loves me. Okay. Haven't done Trump for a while, so it's not that great, but it's pretty good. It's better than most. Anyway, got to work on my Trump. What I need to do is get one of these hats with blonde hair spilling out all over it. And this is not a Trump hat. It's a Make Trudeau a Drama Teacher again. But as a few comments have been made when I've shown this hat, spare the kids. Don't let him teach again. Don't worry. Trudeau is not going to get hired by any school in any jurisdiction in Canada, private or otherwise, with his history. At any rate, thanks for watching, and we shall see what happens. I do want to do I do want to do this weekend. Probably Sunday would be a good night to do it, and talk about this culture of death that exists within Canada. And Sunday would be a good day to do it, because then I could talk about, contrast that with the author of Life. Whereas we live in a country that is addicted to this culture of death. We have medical assistance in dying. You can get an abortion anytime you want. And I know people are surprised by that. They don't want to believe it. And I don't blame them, to think that an abortion can be held at any time. Like, I'm talking right before birth. And here's the thing, and it does happen. Is it huge? No. But neither is patricide. Do we suddenly get all the books, laws off the books about killing your parents because it's such a rare thing? We don't need laws. There was a case where in Quebec, and I wanted to search out these articles so that I could share them to prove my point in a way. There was Quebec, when they had late-term abortions to be performed, they didn't have any clinics in the province of Quebec to deal with them, so they sent the patients down to, I think the state was Vermont, but then that state closed its late-term abortion clinic, and Quebec women were left with no option for late-term abortion, and they were debating it in the National Assembly, and the Minister of Health made the point that, abortion is a sacrosanct right in Canada and in Quebec, and that they had to address this situation to ensure that at any stage during a pregnancy, even if it's in the last weeks before the due date, that a woman has the right to access an abortion. And there were actually numbers in that article, an indication of the number, and it wasn't huge. I think it was like 1 or 2 dozen a year, but it happens, and that's just one province, Quebec. So, hey, and Well Beef writes, ending stream with a smile or a pumpkin or whatever is good. And Sharunya is talking about the fact that, and I'm trying to remember where this, I think it was in Halifax, about a woman, a 19-year-old, who working at a Walmart was found dead. And the story is that it was a walk-in oven that this individual was found in. And we're still waiting for details on the exact circumstances of this young girl's demise, of her death. And apparently, from the reporting that I've seen and read, it was her mother who found her, which is horrifying. But anyway, the world is going crazy. But get into a relationship with Jesus Christ, and you can navigate this world. So may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may the Lord grant you peace. So we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you for everyone who showed up. And Sunday night will be my next one. And if you want to hit the like, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, you're most welcome. We'll talk to you all then. And we'll be talking about that. Communistic Canada's cult of death and the antidote. And the antidote can be found right here. And he'll take up residence in your heart. So we'll talk to you all soon. Good night.